Calling the roll for the Monday, November 14, 2022 Board of Control meeting. It is 11 a.m. We have Jim Boyle serving as an alternate for Nan Baker. Here. Councilman Dale Miller.
Here.
Trevor Meckler serving as alternate for Purnell Jones Jr.
Here.
We have Mike Dever.
Here.
Lee Tucker serving as alternate for the fiscal officer.
Here.
Paul Porter.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. If we could take a second to review the minutes from November 7th. If there are no corrections to the minutes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Dever. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to public comment.
No public comment.
Okay, moving on to contracts and awards. First item.
First item, BC 2022-685, Department of Public Works submitting an RFP exemption, which will result in an award recommendation to River City Furniture, DBA, the RCF Group, in the amount not to exceed $9,547.30 for a state contract purchase of 7 desks, pedestals, and chairs for the second floor Justice Center, and recommending a purchase order with said RFP exemption.
Good morning. Matt Reimer with the Department of Public Works. This furniture procurement is for a minor reconfiguration of our superintendent's office on the second floor of the Justice Center. That office is the command center, so to speak, for all our custodial and maintenance operations operating out of the Justice Center complex. And this will provide enough desks expanding from 3 to 7 to support all of our supervisory teams across first and second shift. It is a state term purchase. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this item? Hearing no questions, I make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Miller. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to next item.
Next item, BC 2022-686, Department of Public Works submitting an RFP exemption, which will result in an award recommendation to Northern Flooring Specialist in the amount not to exceed $9,735.06 for the purchase of carpet, tile, and related materials for installation at the Justice Center, and recommending a purchase order with said RFP exemption.
Good morning, Matt Reimer again from the Department of Public Works. This is the carpet material for the same project that I just mentioned in the previous item. This will be installed by our county trades. The vast majority of the items on this quote are under state term pricing. It's listed as an exemption because there are some ancillary adhesives and other items that are not on the state term contract that are part of this quote.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this item?
You said most. What part isn't? Why were they broken out?
So of the $9,735 for the cost of materials, 82% or $72.81 are of the carpet and are on
Okay.
state term contract. So that's the majority
What's the
of
balance of, what is the actual product for the balance of?
Shaw pressure sensitive adhesive.
Oh, adhesives, all right, I got it.
Vinyl cove base and a 6-inch vinyl base.
All right, so stuff connected to the installation of the carpet.
Yes, sir.
If I could add to this, this came up, I think during the summer on another item. Tom, you might recall that. It's the adhesive, and then, as Matt just indicated, that vinyl cove base that like starts at the bottom of the wall. And it didn't make sense to bid it out since everything else is such a good deal on the state term pricing. We just have to reflect that it's an exemption because that stuff's not on state term, and that's why we ask Public Works to mention that in the presentation.
Thank you.
Also, the delivery charge to the Justice Center is not a state term pricing item. So, okay.
Any additional questions? Hearing none, I make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Boyle. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item approved.
Thank you.
Next item.
Next item, BC 2022-687, Department of Development requesting approval of an affordable federal home loan in the amount of $450,000 to Solon Community Living or its designee for the Solon Community Living Affordable Housing Project located at 35340 Aurora Road in the city of Solon to provide 10 affordable newly constructed units.
Good morning, Sarah Parks Jackson, Department of Development. This is a $450,000 loan using our Federal Home Investment Partnership Act funds. These funds will create units for residents who are developmentally disabled. in the city of Solon.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this item? Hearing no questions, I make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Miller. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item approved. Next item?
Thank you.
Next item, BC 2022-688, Department of Purchasing, on behalf of the County Treasurer's Office, submitting an amendment to a master services agreement with Key Bank National Association for banking and treasury services for the period of April 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2024, and for additional funds for procurement card program services for various departments in the total amount not to exceed $51,125. For additional funds, Department of Public Works, $7,000. Department of Human Resources, $2,125. Court of Common Pleas Juvenile Court Division, $40,000. Department of Health and Human Services, Community Initiatives Division, Family and Children First Council, $2,000. To add a user department effective upon contract signature of all parties, Department of Sustainability.
Good morning, Paul Porter, Director, Department of Purchasing. As Cheryl just indicated, there are several departments that are having additional funds for the P-card services, as well as adding the Department of Sustainability. We're adding sustainability as a user department, but their amount of funding is still being determined. So this will enable them to generate a card, but it won't have funds attached to it yet. We'll bring that forward in the next amendment that we do for this one. There are multiple funding sources. Each department has a different funding source. So if you refer to the backup, the funding sources are all listed in there in the backup. We've got general fund for the bulk of this, but the FCFC funding comes from the HHS levy. Does anybody have any questions on it?
Mr. McAleer?
Paul, the juvenile court dollar amount seems higher than prior years. Is that increase from previous years? That just seems more than what we typically authorize with P cards.
Sure. It is a high dollar amount, but actually what they're doing with this, and I've talked to my staff members that maybe in the future we might want to reflect this a little bit differently, is using different accounting units. So we're actually not going to have a higher expenditure amount. They're consolidating their expenditures into two different accounting units. And I can look and see what their historical spending has been like to see if we've seen an uptick in spending at all. But my understanding from talking to my team about it was that it was more consolidating it in a couple of different accounting units, just for accounting purposes.
Yeah, could you get us the
Sure.
history of that? I just seeing prior approvals, and you look at like Public Works where it's only 7,000, right? You would think Public Works might utilize it more.
Sure.
But, okay.
And I suppose, you know, Public Works is an example of a team that has multiple P cards. I know that juvenile court has more than one, but it might not be as many as what's in use at Public Works. But again, I can get that information and follow up with you, Trevor.
Thanks, Paul.
Paul, if I could,
Yeah, absolutely.
just in regards to sustainability, what type of purchasing do you expect coming out of them? Is it for advertisement, or what are we looking at here?
Sure, I would say standard things like other departments use the P cards for, basically like purchases, if you have to do a purchase online, for instance, for a vendor that wouldn't accept a purchase order. Things like conference fees and online registrations. I don't know that sustainability would do a lot of advertising. I'm more than happy to ask Mike about that, though.
That's great. Thanks, Paul.
Any additional questions? Hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item approved. Next item?
Next item, BC 2022-689, Department of Information Technology, submitting an RFP exemption, which will result in an award recommendation to MNJ Technologies Direct Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $25,564.10 for state contract purchase of 15 HP ZBook Firefly mobile workstations, accessories including HP hardware and software licenses for the Sheriff's Department, and recommending a purchase order with said RFP exemption.
Good morning, Janelle Green, Department of IT. This is a purchase that it is on behalf of the Sheriff's Department for computer equipment. These are our IT standards as set forth by TAC. The State Criminal Alien Assistance Program is a grant that the Sheriff's Department has utilized this year for equipment. I believe this is probably the third or fourth time we brought a purchase with this grant forward.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this item? Hearing none, I make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second?
Oh, seconded by Mr. Dever. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item approved. Next item?
Thank you.
Next item, BC 2022-690, Department of Human Resources recommending award and enter into a contract with ERC Services Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $7,500 and no cents for training services on conducting workplace investigations commencing upon contract signature of all parties through May 31st, 2023.
Stephen Witt with Human Resources. This is a contract that was informally bid for workplace investigation training. What that is for various HR staff, like the HR generalists and their staff and the HR managers. There's been a lot of turnover in the past few years, and what we like to do is every few years when we have that turnover is to get them trained on proper workplace investigation trainings. So when there is a complaint or an investigation that needs to be handled, they know the proper laws and procedures to follow, how to build a plan to conduct a proper investigation, what questions to ask, who to question, and how to document that properly in the event that it does need to go to an arbiter or mediator or court.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this item? Mr. Boyle?
Okay, so we have Sarah Nemeth still on there. Not in HR.
No, there are several HR staff that are with the sheriff HR, but they are still included in this group because the training would be useful for them as well.
Okay, in HR.
Yes.
Is there gonna be a charge? Is there gonna be a chargeback, or do we?
No,
It's a de minimis.
it's a small enough amount that will cover it. We're already paying for the training, and the training is a standard. I believe there's not really a cap on how many people can attend.
All right, thank you.
Any additional questions? Hearing none, I make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Boyle. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item approved. Next
Thank you.
item?
Next item, BC 2022-691, Office of the Medical Examiner recommend an award and enter into contract with Thermal Electron North America LLC and the amount not to exceed $15,964 and no cents for sole source purchase of a 2-year service plan for 2 Nicolette IS-320 mid-infrared Fourier transform infrared FTIR spectrometers commencing upon contract signature of all parties through June 15, 2024.
Not bad first time through, that's good. Hugh Shannon, Medical Examiner's Office. This is a service plan for these spectrometers in the drug chemistry unit. The one that came with the purchase is getting ready to expire.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this item? Hearing none, I make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Boyle. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next item?
Thank you.
Next item, BC 2022-692, Office of the Medical Examiner submitting an RFP exemption, which will result in award of a master contract with various providers and the total amount not to exceed $90,000 for expert testimony relating to autopsy and death investigations for the period October 24, 2022 through December 31st, 2023, and recommending various contracts with said exemption as follows. Dr. Todd Barr, $30,000. Dr. Andrea McCullum, $30,000. Dr. Erica Armstrong, $30,000.
Hugh Shannon, Medical Examiner's Office. So I believe you were aware that we had 3 of our doctors that had left earlier this year for Franklin County. In the course of their duties with Cuyahoga County as forensic pathologists, some of their cases will require them to return back to Cuyahoga County and testify in court. We were having, there were some logistical issues with Franklin County about releasing them for their time, paying them for their time. This was a negotiation that the Chief of Staff brought on their behalf with the prosecutor to try to get a solution so that there was no interruption in the justice system about having them come and testify. So it'll run through next year, end of next year. It's possible, not likely, that it would go, that we would be any need for it beyond that point. Again, there's about 70 cases between those three doctors that are on the potential docket. A lot of those will plea out, so the amount of money that we used hopefully covers those full 70 cases, but it's unlikely that all 70 will actually come to trial.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this item? Councilman Miller?
I'll defer to Trevor.
Yeah, thanks for that explanation. Are we only going to pay the doctors if it goes to trial, or is there any trial prep that we would be paying them for?
So the way the revised code reads, it would only pay for prep time if it was a civil case. For criminal cases, I think it will simply be for their expert testimony and the time that they're traveling from Franklin County to Cuyahoga County.
And is it an issue with our existing doctors in terms of workload that our existing staff couldn't be the expert witnesses, right? Because if something happened to one of them, right, like, why can't we use our existing staff?
So technically we could. The point that you bring up is an issue at the moment with us being down still 3 doctors. Their time is best served inside our facility doing the work for Cuyahoga County. Under normal circumstances, yes, we would be able to cover that if somebody moved out of the country or, you know, was hit by a bus or something like that. Yeah, we would normally pick that up. The prosecutor's office prefers that the actual forensic pathologist who performed the autopsy is the one who's testifying. But of course, any of them would be, you know, competent and acceptable to the court to testify in those cases. But this was the compromise that was worked out.
I figured it was more workload based off your comments in committee and presentations in front of Councilman Miller, so that's what I just wanted to make sure that someone else could do it if it didn't have to be them, but based off the fact you're down staff, I figured that
Correct.
played a role.
It's a complicating factor.
May I ask a question on the last item?
Yes, sir.
What happens to the old spectrometers?
So these were newly purchased last year. This is a service plan, so if they break down, those service calls are covered. So the 2-year service plan will cover these 2 new pieces of equipment that were purchased for the drug chemistry unit off the opioid fund. So these are additional spectrometers, new equipment that was purchased last year.
So they're not replacing
No, sir.
replacing other equipment?
No, sir, this is just the service contract for these 2 new items, pieces of equipment.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm a little confused on the matter in front of us. So Barr, McCollum, and Armstrong, were county employees, correct?
Yes,
And they're still in the state of Ohio,
yes,
and they're subject to subpoena.
yes.
And I guess my question is more for law. I mean, are there different rules for, I mean, I'm trying to go back to my prosecutor days. Are there different rules for procuring the presence and/or testimony of medical examiner personnel than there are, for example, other, say, experts? I mean, I guess I don't understand why we're paying them when, I mean, if we subpoena them, they have to show up. They're under court order.
This is Jared Zubertowski from the Law Department. Jim, I am happy to look into that. I don't have an answer for you regarding that. I definitely don't want to misspeak on any rules regarding subpoenas of experts.
My understanding is that the ORC, they are governed under expert witnesses
Okay.
for testimony. Again, the issue became, that our staff currently is overloaded to be able to pick
No,
up
I get
those
that, Hugh.
cases.
But the
Two
issue-
was is that the Franklin County, I don't know if it was the Franklin County coroner, who's actually not even the coroner anymore, she resigned. But when those doctors got to Franklin County, they were having problems getting released for their legal
But
duties.
they shouldn't. If they're under subpoena, their current employer has an obligation to honor the subpoena that they've received. And I get it. I mean, I'm not
Yep.
trying to, I'm a little surprised that we're paying people, and this money will go directly to them, not to, if this is authorized, these payments will go to these 3 doctors.
Correct. So my understanding is that Franklin County would not release them for their time, and that the only way that they could do that is to come and testify would be to take their personal time, PTO, vacation, whatever, and that they were being reimbursed for that. And this was the compromise that was created to ensure that the prosecutor was getting them for testimony.
I mean, look, that's fine, we can move it forward, it's important to have them here, but I find it really difficult to believe that an employer would say, despite being duly subpoenaed to appear in court, we're not going to let you go. I mean, perhaps there's different rules, but boy, that doesn't sound like something that I'm familiar with.
This is my understanding of how this was.
Okay, and so when you
brought
say it
forward.
was worked out, who were the people that worked this out?
So the doctors themselves had hired an attorney to
Okay,
help handle negotiations with various offices around Northeast Ohio, because our office does autopsy work for other counties. This will not cover any work, any testimony that would take place outside of Cuyahoga County. We made that clear. But I've gotten calls from other counties' prosecutors' offices asking for a way to get in touch with them, how do we handle subpoenaing, and I
well, it sounds
I
like
said
they
the
don't even
same-
need to be subpoenaed, it sounds like we're just gonna pay them to show up, but okay, and the last thing that I'm gonna say is, look, I get it, that the prosecutor prefers that this be the mechanism, and that's great, that they have a preference for how this works out, but as it relates to the process, it should be functionally done by what the law mandates occurring, rather than what their preference. It's interesting, I assume that this money isn't coming from the prosecutor's budget, correct?
I am not aware that it would.
Despite their preference for this being the mechanism of obtaining their presence.
That has not, as far as I know, the details of where these funds are coming from is,
Okay.
I haven't been made them
I mean,
aware.
and I
yet.
do think it's, I mean, look, it's, like you said, if Bart died, I mean, someone would show up.
Correct.
Okay. I mean,
Madam Chair, I would suggest, based off Mr. Boyle's question to Jarrett, to the Law Department, if we could hold this item for a week, because I think his point about they're required to show up if they get subpoenaed, I think is a valid question before we agree to spend $90,000 on this.
We can hold it. You're gonna look into this for us, Jared, or,
Absolutely.
thank you.
I will just add that testimony has already been given, and so the time that they've already spent, I think, was under the understanding that this was coming. Obviously, if we wait a week,
Right,
it won't
and
make.
we don't, to Jim's point, we don't cover other expert testimony for the prosecutor's office. That would, so.
Correct. I think in light of your previous questions, that this was a compromise that was being worked out in order to alleviate pressure on our staff, as well as making sure that the doctors themselves, will be available for the county.
I get that
and the
first
justice
argument.
system.
I mean, I understand, right, because we know you're short-staffed, but I think knowing at least the answer to Jim's question.
If I could offer one observation, I think part of the reason that there was like kind of this attempt at a compromise is medical expert testimony by folks from the medical examiner's office is not usually done on like a hostile or compelled basis. Like the prosecutor's office works with them. They show up and present this testimony, and they're paid as employees of the county when doing that. They're not like a reluctant witness that has to be brought here under subpoena. It sounds to me like this arrangement would continue kind of the mechanism by which they were paid as employees previously. That was my read on it.
I don't have any issue with that. I mean, the issue that I have is that you're asking for 90 grand to compel people to show up here that otherwise have an obligation to be here. And I guess the last piece that I would make you is, I assume that when somebody got legal counsel, it wasn't the law department, nor was it the prosecutors. What, was it?
The doctors,
Yeah,
no, they hired a private attorney.
somebody paid them to do it too. I mean, look, I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here, and more than anything else, I'm not sure that, all right, we can hold off on it if that's what the body wants to do.
So this item will be held till next week. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next item.
Next item, BC 2022-693, Sheriff's Department recommend an award and enter into a purchase order with Industrial Video and Control and the amount not to exceed $129,500 for 2 self-contained mobile camera surveillance units for criminal justice information services.
Chris Costin, Sheriff's Department. We're asking for an approval of this purchase order with Industrial Video Control for 2 mobile trailer units that will be outserved within the county. These mobile units are part of the Violent Crime Reduction Grant that we're purchasing these through.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this item? Hearing no questions, I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Dever. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item approved. Next item.
Next item, BC 2022-694, Sheriff's Department recommending award and enter into a purchase order with Millennium Access Control Technology Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $24,320 and no cents for a sole source purchase of 8 MPACs, 200 frame and tray assemblies, and 8 paracentric keys for use in the jail.
Chris Costin, Sheriff's Department. We're asking for an approval of source purchase of these units. What they are, these are metal trays that go in between the doors where the correction officers could feed the inmates without food or objects thrown back at them. We did purchase this through sole source, and I believe our iron workers will be doing the installation.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this item?
I remember that. It's like a work of art to get those things in there. It's quite
Yes.
impressive. Yeah. I'll second. No,
Second by
it
Mr.
just
Boyle.
struck me as interesting.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item approved. Next item.
Next item, BC 2022-695, Sheriff's Department submitting amendments to agreements with various municipalities and a board for inmate housing services for various time periods to extend the time period to December 31st, 2023, and for additional revenue in the total estimated amount of $387,000 for the period January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2022, with Board of Park Commissioners of the Cleveland Metropolitan Park District in the estimated amount of $30,000, with Village of Highland Hills in the estimated amount of $20,000, with the City of Richmond Heights in the estimated amount of $30,000, with Village of Woodmere in the estimated amount of $3,000, for the period February 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2022, with the City of Euclid in the estimated amount of $300,000. For the period August 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2022, with Village of Bracknell in the estimated amount of $4,000.
Chris Costin, Sheriff's Department. What we're doing is we're extending our agreements with these municipalities for our prisoner board and care. We're trying to get them all on the same page where they expire at the same time, 12/31/2023. That's all I can tell you about them. We do have Sheriff Hammond and Administrator Gibson for additional questions.
Any questions on this item?
Yes. So, do these contracts end on 12/31/2022 or 23?
Currently, they're 22. These are extending them to 2023,
I see.
the new amendments, yes.
And what is the Public Safety's Department's long-term strategy around around these contracts. I'm particularly wondering, is this something that we're going to continue to do when we build the new jail? What's the long-term plan on this?
Steve Hammond, Sheriff's Department. It's my plan to not have to come back here for another extension next year. What we like to do, number one, is give these 5 municipalities an opportunity to find alternative housing, number one. Number two, currently they're citing, let me backtrack a little bit. In 2020, Cuyahoga County Jail stopped accepting misdemeanor inmates from municipalities with the exception of domestic violence. We could only use that logic and reasoning for so long. Now it's starting to open back up, and municipalities need housing for inmates. At that time, we signed contracts with these 5 municipalities to house their inmates. We could cut them off right now, but actually under ORC, if they started to cite under state code, they'd be our inmates anyway. So we're going to do this for 1 more year, give them an opportunity, if approved, give them an opportunity to find alternative housing, and that's it. We're going to have to, with the new jail, we don't plan on having contracts with anyone. Those aren't our plans.
Thank you for that information. And to follow up, did I hear you correctly that we're starting to be open to municipal inmates?
We're looking at it. We're getting some. We've had some conversations with the municipal judges, a few of them, and at some point in time, we're going to have to open back up to sentence misdemeanors who have been sentenced under ORC. We are waiting. What we want to do this year, we're implementing central booking, and we want to see how that process works as far as expediting the processing of inmates from the time they're arrested, processed, to release, particularly the low-level violators. We want to process them through the system a little bit faster, and maybe reduce the number of days held in custody, as well as our overall daily population, which is something we tend to battle and struggle with on a daily basis, trying to process prisoners through expeditiously.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions?
Sheriff, how many inmates for these 6 entities are we holding right now?
You know, I don't know. Do you have a daily count, Rhonda?
I do, but I can get that for you.
Thanks, Rhonda. And then, Sheriff, right, one of the arguments we do here is that right now, if we don't start taking the city's inmates, they'll just start charging them under, I think it's the state code or what, right? But in that scenario, and this is something that I don't think rarely gets discussed, though, we then would receive the revenue from that charge. So I just caution, because we've heard that argument for the last 8 years, the county then gets that revenue. The cities will then forego the revenue that they get from those charges. So
We won't get all the revenue.
But we
We'll
get
some
more
of
than
it.
what, yeah.
They
so-
won't get any of it.
Right, so I keep hearing these cities are gonna do that, but then they have to give up revenue. And for like a city of Cleveland, that's a significant amount of money that they would be giving up. So I keep hearing that people say that, but they never talk about that second part with it. And then the cities would forego quite a bit of revenue that some of them are used to receiving, so.
The other side of that, and take it from a former municipal police chief, you can pick and choose who you send down the county,
Right,
if you know what I mean.
yeah, good point. So I mean, I believe this was one of the answers to the pre-questions that we asked, and I think you're spot on, right, where this is gonna be a big discussion with the next executive. What is the long-term plan? Because even if we're discussing planning for a new jail, whatever that looks like, or a remodel, whatever, we still need to plan, are we gonna be holding municipal inmates or not? And that number, of course, fluctuates, so, thanks for the response to that answer, or to that question.
You're welcome.
Additional questions?
What's the daily rate for?
I believe it's $105.26 per day.
Oh, I'll ask the question everyone wants to know. What's the city of Cleveland's?
Less than that.
Yeah, I don't have it off on the top of my head, but it's less
No,
than
it's
that.
less.
Yeah, it's less than that.
Fair enough.
What, Sheriff, is all 6 pay 105?
Yes, everyone pays the same.
Is that an increase from 2022, or is it the same rate that they're currently paying?
It appears to be the same. I'm looking at one of the original contracts, and I'm also looking at the addendum. Chris, is still the same, isn't it? Yeah, it's the same.
Was there discussion with these 6 about raising that? Only because, as we know from the sheriff's testimony in committee, right, our daily cost per inmate is higher than 105. Was there any discussion with these 6 about raising it?
No, I haven't had any discussions with any of them.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Are you going to be presenting this afternoon at the budget hearing?
Yes.
I'm going to preview one question that I'm going to be asking so that you can think about it between now and then. And the line of questioning is going to be, what is it that you need that you don't have that would be required for the jail to perform better in terms of safety and humaneness of treatment and the other operating things that are important to us?
Okay, that's
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Hearing none, I make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item approved. Next item.
Next item, BC 2022-696, Department of Workforce Development, submitting an amendment to a contract with Linking Employment Abilities and Potential, LEAP, for the in-school youth program for students with disabilities for the Comprehensive Case Management Employment Program, Employment Education and Training Services for Young Adults in connection with the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act for the period of July 1st, 2019 through June 30th of 2023 to change the scope of services effective July 1st, 2022, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $139,000 even.
Lee, I'm going to ask if we can push this one to next week, because I don't see Department of Workforce Development here for this one.
Okay. Next item.
I just want to make a correction. I got a call. It's 122.12 is what we are charging these municipalities.
So, just for the record, $23 more per day, per inmate, more than what City of Cleveland pays.
Okay, thank you. Next item.
Next item, BC 2022-697, Department of Health and Human Services, Community Initiatives Division, Family and Children First Council, submitting an amendment to an agreement with Ohio State University on behalf of the Ohio State University Extension for planning, coordinator, and facilitator services for the Youth Advocacy and Leadership Coalition of Cuyahoga County for the period January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2022, to extend the time period to December 31st, 2023, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $125,347.00.
Good morning, Kathleen Thomasak from Family and Children First Council. This is our Youth Advocacy Leadership program that we run through Ohio State Extension. It is for youth who want to who are interested in leadership abilities. They are within 52 school districts here in Cuyahoga County. We currently have 153 youth involved for this year. For last year, we had 230. So please keep in mind that the 153 is up until August of this year. It's not for the full year. They participate in various programs throughout Cuyahoga County. They've done stuff for county council, for the county exec in previous years. I do have a list of all the different programs if you would like for me to read those. They take that shy kid who is not that outgoing and put them into leadership roles to help expand their social emotional areas. We've had kids who have gone on to college and graduated. one of them actually has come back and worked in the program as one of the assistants at Ohio State Extension. They engage with their families and with other youth. They help to build community capacity. They participate in voting programs throughout Cuyahoga County. It's similar to what a 4-H program would be in other counties, but we've just shaped it to meet our needs here in Cuyahoga County.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this item? Seeing none, I make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Deborah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, any nays? Okay, item approved. Next item.
Next item, BC 2022-698, Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Children and Family Services, recommended an award and enter into a contract with the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland in the amount not to exceed $116,169.00 for educational legal services for children in the custody of the Department of Children and Family Services for the period of January 1st, 2023 to December 31st of 2025.
Good morning, Marcos Cortez with Health and Human Services on behalf of Children and Family Services. This is a contract again with Legal Aid Society. They will serve as a specialized subject matter partner with DCFS on all educationally related matters for children in the care of the agency. The goal is to remove barriers to education, securing necessary special education services, and keeping kids in school. We issued an RFP in August of this year. We received one proposal. We reviewed that proposal, which was Legal Aid Society, and so we are awarding them this contract.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this item? Mr. McAleer?
Marcos, is Legal Aid Society the current vendor for these services?
They are.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Boyle. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Item approved. Next item, moving on to the consent agenda items.
Consent agenda items are BC 2022-699 through BC 2022-701.
Let's take a moment to review.
Madam Chair. I have a question on number 700.
Uh-huh.
I have not seen a membership dues request presented this way. It's normally just presented as a normal contract. Is this something new?
Is this new, Paul?
No, this isn't necessarily new. It could be just where we put it on the agenda. Membership requests have been listed in the past. Usually it's kind of a smaller dollar amount than that. But I can double check on some prior ones and make sure that this is in keeping with how we posted in the past. It'll still get a vote even if it's on the consent agenda.
Of course. Yeah. Okay.
Additional questions? Hearing none, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda items. You have a question?
I'll second.
Oh, seconded by Mr. Porter. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item approved. Moving, any public comment?
No other business, no public comment.
Madam Chair, if I could take a second just to introduce Eric and Sabrina from the transition
Oh, sure.
team. They're both down here, so today's their first day. So just wanted to make sure the Board of Control knew the two. So
Welcome, thank you. Here, no further items on the agenda. I make a motion to approve, adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Miller. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.
Trevor, I have two quick questions. What is the planned order of departure?
Do you want to talk to Bill about that?
We're gonna have to.
I just looked at him, your boss. We'll get it back on the agenda.
What is this?
Yeah,
you know what, so I remember, I went to Sheriff, I went down to
I don't, I think they have to vote on it, because wasn't it a
Okay.
biennial? I think they'll vote on the
It's
schedule
crazy, I never paid
at
any
their
attention.
first meeting
And I'm like,
in
oh, and they're like,